I had the honor a few years ago to offer the chalice lighting at David's ordination in this congregation before I served as minister here. So I offer those same words again today for you and for David because they are still true. Here in a great cloud of witnesses we gather. Here in a space set aside in a world that is overcome with agendas and tasks and timelines. As people who are overcome with the pressure to be or to act or to do or to achieve, to succeed, whatever that means. Here we say breathe. Here we say pause. Take down the measurements on your humanity. Take down the questions of validation of your worth. In this space, among these people, in this time set apart, set aside, yet deeply woven into our everyday lives, in this space, your identity is unquestioned. Sacred child of earth and sky and spirit and God, your worth is unwavering. You are beloved and you are broken and beloved yet still. Your calling is proclaimed to do justice and to love kindness and to move humbly in this world. In this space, in the calling of our lives and values, in the simple moments of every day, in this space where we call the ordinary sacred and the everyday holy, we are called to be our best selves to a renewed world. Here let your souls be nourished enough, your identity confirmed enough, your worth affirmed enough, and your calling clear enough, so that together, in the words of an old preacher, we will shake the gates of hell and build heaven on earth. We shake the gates, and we build the beloved community, and it begins now. Our first reading is When I Change by Ma Teresa Gustillo Gallardo. I invite you to respond. I'll invite you to respond during it with the line, when I change, the world changes. So I'll say a line and then I'll invite you to say that. When I change, the world changes. We are here to derive meaning in our actions. When I change, the world changes. We are here to win our power back over our areas of powerlessness. When I change, the world changes. We are here to deepen our understanding of ourselves in order to strengthen self-discipline. When I change, the world changes. We are here to abolish prejudice with an appreciation for our diversity and of our differences. When I change, the world changes. We are here to feel our personal power and our capacity to affect the lives of other people. When I change, the world changes. We are here to become teachers to each other. When I change, the world changes. We are here to spend time away from the usual influences and to relearn reality. When I change, the world changes. When I have the desire, I have the power and the means to achieve my goals. When I change, the world changes. And I am here to see that my singular life is a gateway to countless possibilities. When I change, the world changes. And a reading from Where I Lived and What I Lived For from Walden by Henry David Thoreau. It matters not what the clocks say, or the attitudes and labors of humans. Morning is when I am awake, and there is a dawn in me. Moral reform is the effort to throw off sleep. We must learn to reawaken and to keep ourselves awake, not by mechanical aids, but by an infinite expectation of the dawn, which does not forsake us, even in our soundest sleep. I know of no more encouraging fact than the unquestionable ability of humans to elevate their lives by a conscious endeavor. It is something to be able to paint a particular picture or to carve a statue, and so to make a few objects beautiful. But it is far more glorious to carve and to paint the very atmosphere, the medium through which we look, which morally we can do, to affect the quality of our day. That is the highest of the arts.
In December of 2008, nearly 10 years ago, we are coming up on 6 months away from this anniversary, my spouse and I moved to Rochester. We joined this church, and shortly after, I entered seminary. Over the next 6 years, you walked with me in this path toward ministry. You taught me the ways of worship. You introduced me to small group ministry. You gave me a free and frequent pulpit. You invited me into rites of passage, and importantly, you ignited within me a commitment to social justice. Particularly through work with the Racial Justice Task Group here, you helped me come to see how race permeates everything we do in this country, even in the issue of gun violence, which we will address specifically today. You were gracious, forgiving, loving, and supportive in all of this, and in 2015, you offered me the high honor of ordaining me into ministry. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. For the past 2 years, I have been serving at United Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Waukesha, just outside of Milwaukee. It has been going pretty well. We are a small and secure congregation in an area that offers a lot of potential. I have UU colleagues within a half an hour of me. We are stepping out in our community. We just put solar panels on the roof. We are extending the social justice work of the church and making ourselves known. This is the first time since ordination that I have been back with you, at least in this spot. I am grateful for the invitation, and in fact, a little nervous. It is great to see so many familiar faces, and new ones too. You are served here by excellent ministry. I am forever a student here. By way of introducing my topic today, I also want to share a personal note. Some of you may know my father, Calvin Kramer, a strong, optimistic, outspoken soul, died earlier this year after a pretty steep decline brought about by cancer and congestive heart failure. His death occurred just about the time of the walkouts and the demonstrations and public statements by youth in this nation over gun violence in the wake of the fatal shootings at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. I think my father would have been proud of the students demonstrating. In his later years, he had become a writer of letters to the editor. Guns and gun violence were among the topics heavy on his mind. In fact, he grew up with guns, hunted with them all his life, was a proud veteran of the Korean War, and through all that, he became an advocate for gun control. His strong ideas were with him up to the end. In fact, a day before I was to deliver a version of this sermon the first time, and just 2 days before he died, he called me to suggest edits. Like a good son, I ignored him. But I want to share with you some lines from a letter to the editor that he wrote in January of 2016 and rededicate this service to him. Guns, 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 he writes, the current Wisconsin administration has given us a series of laws and proposed laws that foment violence, manslaughter, and fear. I am not opposed to owning a gun, he says, but today's weapons are often intended and legalized only for manslaughter. I see no reason for any American other than military or law enforcement personnel to own an assault weapon. I'm disappointed, he says, that we don't have a single lawmaker maverick enough to vote against weapons intended for manslaughter. I'm proud of my father. He had real courage. Not stand your ground courage, but stand up for what you believe in courage. Stand up for what's right courage. His horizon is farther than you can see. His world was made to be free in. He was committed to make it so. May we all be so committed. So anyway, I was listening to my favorite radio station this year earlier, WOJB, Woodland Community Radio, broadcasting from the La Croix Reservation in Reserve, Wisconsin. It's my favorite for a bunch of reasons, not the least of which is their crazy eclectic tastes. When the host of that particular show, speaking in his characteristic, usual up-north, unvarnished style, queued up a country western song about a guy whose wife had left him. Shocking topic for a country song, I know. But here's the chorus. I play classical music when it rains, country when I am in pain. I won't play Beethoven if the mood's just not right. I feel like Hank Williams tonight. And more verses. I play jazz when I'm confused, country when I lose, and when I'm real high, I play rock and roll, country when I'm losing control. I don't play Chuck Berry quite as much as I like. I feel like Hank Williams tonight. I have never liked country music. Ever since I was a kid, maybe it was the twang, I don't know, but the sentimentality too much heartache, too little behind it. I know that makes me a geek and a snob, but this song was triggering all of my stereotypes. As a tail-end baby boomer born into that era of exploration and culture shift, I have been all about rock and roll. I am drawn to its power, its ability to capture the turn, to speak for a generation that aspired to be unlike any other generation before. There is real power in music, power to speak a language deeper than words. Be watchful against innovations in music, counter to the established order, says Plato in The Republic. Guard against them. A change to a new type of music is a hazard of all our fortunes. For the modes of music are never disturbed without unsettling of the most fundamental political and social conventions. Stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. That's why it's rock and roll for me. Or later, as I grew, classical and jazz and reggae and blues and zydeco and ska, even my father's polka music. But not country. Not the cigarettes and the whiskey, not the hand-wringing or the reactionary yearning for a simpler time that never was. At least that's how I saw it. But as I have grown older, I have mellowed a bit. We were having a conversation around dinner some time ago, and someone was making a case for the lyrics of country music over and against the lyrics of rock and roll. Country songs, they say, always tell a story. There's a narrative, a point to it. Rock and roll, on the other hand, is often as not, na, 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 hey, hey, baby. Even Jim Morrison, vaunted poet of the Doors, gives us lines like catacombs, nursery bones, winter women growing stones, carrying babies to the river, streets and shoes, avenues, leather riders selling news, the monk bought lunch. That's deep, man. The stories we tell ourselves shape who we are. The narrative both expresses and determines a worldview. This is my linguistic theory, and this is nearly all of what religion is about for me. The language we use to tell the truth we see. There is that sense of personal revelation from which religion grows. That time alone staring at the night sky or walking with the saints and the angels. The mystics, with their shape-shifting, transformative power over the direction of religion, have always been attractive to me, but no mystic ever moved another person's soul by cloistering away completely. To remove oneself from the world is not religion, it is denial. Without some communication, some connection with other people, the loftiest ideas, the greatest insights are meaningless. The inside of this is that it behooves us to pay attention to the messages we receive. The narrative both expresses and determines a worldview. The noise of multimedia today is sometimes overwhelming, sometimes numbing, but if we fail to suss out the underlying message of Sinclair Broadcasting, for example, we expose ourselves to great danger. The modes of music are never disturbed without unsettling of the most fundamental political and social conventions. So, if country music, as the music of a good chunk of our culture, tells a story, it's at least worth paying attention to what it's saying. And at least in one instance lately, I have found myself humming along. Outside the Country Music Awards celebration in Nashville last November, an increasingly heralded country music renegade named Sturgill Simpson was busking and cutting it up and taking shots at our culture. Nobody needs a machine gun, he says, coming from a guy who owns a few guns. Nobody needs a machine gun, he says, 3 months before Parkland. Nobody needs a machine gun, coming from a guy who owns a few guns, he says, when maybe more than 90% of everybody is in favor of universal background checks, and maybe 70 or 80% of NRA members agree. What else? Simpson asked outside the awards. Well, his monologue kept going. Gay people should have a right to be happy and live their life any way they want to, and get married if they want. Black people are probably getting tired of being shot in the streets and being enslaved by the industrial prison complex. And hegemony and fascism is alive and well in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you very much. It's quite a lot of ground in a single quote. And Simpson is definitely a renegade among self-styled renegades. But on the guns issue, at least, he is not alone. In March, Rolling Stone reported that in the wake of the shootings in Parkland, the names of more than 36 recording artists disappeared from the website of NRA Country, the lifestyle marketing subset of the NRA that promotes the gun lobby's ties to the country music industry. In fact, country music stars have been drifting away from the NRA for a while. 2 names disappeared from the website in 2013 after Sandy Hook. 2 more were gone after the Las Vegas shootings last year. Sometime in there, the Academy of Country Music quietly ended its annual skeet shoot with the NRA, and now this. NRA Country did a great job of marketing themselves as being about gun safety, said one music agent. A lot of artists signed up without really thinking about how actions have consequences. I can only guess that after the Parkland shooting, there were a lot more acts that felt queasy about having their name directly associated with the NRA, the agent says. As the mass shootings and this level of violence started ramping up over the past few years, corporations and organizations in Nashville have realized that associating with the NRA is not a good look. This is a really interesting turn. At a time when populism and xenophobia and isolationism and tweet after tweet are driving our national conversation, the balladeers of the people are changing up the narrative, at least a little bit. God, guns, and glory seemed to be the refrain for much of country music, but maybe not so much anymore. Maybe the stereotype is changing. Maybe the common sense we are so famous for as Americans, common sense as in Tom Paine and the rest of the founders and revolutionaries of this country, is actually coming around to make sense. At least, I hope so. Nobody needs a machine gun coming from a guy who owns a few guns. That's what I tried to say to the Waukesha School Board earlier this year after a bunch of us stood in support of students on walkout in protest of a culture that promotes the extreme violence increasingly visited upon them. I own guns, 3 shotguns and a couple of rifles. At the moment, I don't use them so much anymore, but I have used them at times frequently in my life. I learned how to treat them from my father, who, as I said, was a farm boy and a Korean War veteran and was proud of his training. As soon as I was old enough, he sent me down to the courthouse for my own hunter safety training with a bunch of other 12-year-olds. I learned to treat every gun as if it were loaded and to never point at anything I did not intend to shoot. I have used my guns mostly for hunting. Part of another sermon sometime about how I view the food chain and my part in it and a truly honest meal. But the fact that my guns are not primarily intended for self-defense, much less aggression, takes nothing away from their lethality. These are not machine guns, but I know they could create a lot of mayhem if someone wanted to use them for that. I am not saying that they are in some way safer because they do not have high-capacity magazines or other modifications to enable rapid fire. I am saying that the difference for me is that these weapons are not specifically designed for or intended for shooting people, and that, more than their mechanical capabilities, separates them from an AR-15 or any other assault-style weapon, weapons which have become the weapons of choice. It's not that you couldn't use my shotgun in this way. It's that my shotgun and my hunter safety course and the strong example of my father and my overall upbringing and demeanor does not invite mass murder. But our gun culture, our celebration of killing, the music we hear, does. When we use the Constitution to condone and even promote AR-15s, which are designed to kill people, we condone and promote killing people. That's the problem. That's our narrative. I am not so naive as to think that if we change the tune, if we stop being nasty, that people will stop being nasty or violent to each other. Not in my lifetime, not ever. And I also know that populist movements, like the one that seems to feed this climate of fear and protectionism, do not go away all by themselves. Populism is tenacious because it operates outside the rules. It's hard to depose its figureheads for their supposed transgressions because nothing they do is shocking to the movement that supports them. Indeed, outrageous behavior just cements their position. From a New York Times editorial, the experiences of countries like Peru and Italy and Thailand are a warning for Americans not to underestimate populism's staying power. To vanquish the broader style will require healing the disease, fixing the reasons for Americans' growing disenchantment with democratic institutions, and reestablishing their commitment to the country's most fundamental norms. I do hope, I believe, we can, as a culture, work to lessen the kind of violence witnessed in Florida and Texas and Nevada and Connecticut and countless cities across the nation, to send a message that armed response is not the automatic go-to in every disagreement or perceived threat. Violence begets violence, fear begets fear, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that, and to affect the quality of the day. That is the highest of the arts. What if we could affect not just the quality of the day, but the quality of the whole conversation, the quality of all our days? I think that it is people like you and me and 90% of other Americans who can and must do something to change the conversation, to sing a different tune. This is how it happens. In changing up who we are, in hearing a new note, in choosing the language we use to speak the truth we see. It will take new laws and specific concrete steps, but it will also take a lot more letters to the editor and school board meetings and speaking out, and it will take a turn in the conversation, a change in expectations. So when I hear voices of some of the soul searchers, some of the balladeers who define the popular culture, and I hear them moving away from the hard line, I think there is hope. The modes of music are never disturbed without an unsettling of the most fundamental political and social conventions. I think we do know heartache in this nation. We do know pain. We are confused and we are on fire. And someday, somehow, maybe, I will feel like Hank Williams tonight. Let's sing together once again. I invite you to rise in body and spirit, and I'm going to change up the order of service just a little bit. Connie already knows this, but please let's sing together hymn number 1028 in your teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment. Please join hands as you are comfortable. I think this is a lovely ritual. Sometimes that human touch is just what it takes, at least once a week. So I was having dinner last night with my son and his partner here in Rochester, and we were playing some lovely African music and some reggae, and because I was talking about this service a little bit, Colin queued up some Sturgill Simpson, and guess what? I still don't like country music. But I admire his wit and his message, and I hope that you take with you today some bit of message, some bit of hope. This is what we come here for each week. And when you go, go in love, seek justice, find peace.